The dust rolled through Ash Hollow like a whisper from the grave, fine and dry, catching the wind in long, tired sighs that seemed to grieve for the town itself. Boards creaked under the weight of silence. The church bell hadn't rung in over a year. Windows sat empty, some shattered, some shuttered with crooked planks. Only the saloon dared to make noise. The faint tinkle of glasses and the occasional bark of laughter leaking from its broken doorway. No one looked out unless they had to. Clara Mayfield stepped into the street with bare feet wrapped in cloth, a shawl torn at the edges, its once white threads dulled by time and dirt. The sun was merciless overhead, flattening the world with heat, but she didn't blink. One hand clutched her boy's fingers, thin and bird-like. The other was tucked close to her chest, fingers clenched around a small silver brooch, a gift from a better time, back when she was a wife, back when she had a voice. Eli walked beside her, wide-eyed, gaunt, and silent. His cheeks were hollow. He hadn't spoken since last night, when he asked if they could chew on the leather of his old shoe. Clara had kissed his forehead, whispered something only he could hear, and they'd walked through the night toward town, following stars that no longer meant anything. The general store loomed ahead like a scab on the skin of Ash Hollow. Its windows were greasy, its sign faded and hanging by one rusty nail. A fat man stood behind the counter inside, scratching at his chest and spitting into a corner. His name was Morton. No one called him Mister. The bell over the door clanged when Clara pushed it open. The air inside was stale, heavy with molasses and gun oil. Clara stepped forward, placing the brooch on the counter with slow, reverent hands. She reached for her throat, but said nothing. Morton looked down at the silver, then at her. Ain't worth much these days. Her eyes flicked to the basket of old loaves near the corner, crusts hard, flies circling. She nodded once. Eli tightened his grip. Morton snorted. Ain't no charity here. If you can't pay in coin, get out. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came. Then came the laughter. Outside, the clatter of boots on wood announced them. The Wrens, a gang with too many pistols and not enough reasons to use them. Bran Wren walked in first, tall, lean, with a face that might have once been handsome before the cruelty carved through it. He wore black gloves even in the heat. Behind him, 3 others fanned out, lounging in the doorway like wolves scenting blood. Well now, Bran said, tipping his hat mockingly, if it ain't the church mouse and her little shadow. One of his men, Cray, leaned down toward Eli. You hungry, boy? He asked, voice syrupy. Bet you'd eat your ma's bones if they was baked good enough. Eli shrank behind Clara. She moved slightly in front of him, still not speaking. Hell, Bran said. She wants to trade jewelry for crusts. Ain't that sweet? Morton tried to back away, but the Wrens didn't care about him anymore. Cray reached for Clara's brooch and tossed it into the dust behind him. Don't need trinkets. You want bread. Let's see what you'll trade for real. Clara stepped back, but not fast enough. Bran's hand lashed out and slapped her so hard her body twisted, knees buckling. Eli screamed. She tried to rise, but Cray grabbed her hair and dragged her outside, fingers tangled in the strands, her shawl slipping free as she clawed at the dirt. She's my mom. Eli shrieked, chasing behind them. She's my mom. We just wanted bread. The street watched in silence. Old McDermott from the blacksmith's porch flinched, but didn't move. The saloon door swung half open and shut again. A woman holding laundry froze, her eyes wide, her jaw tight, before slipping back inside. No one helped. Clara hit the earth with a dull thud, her lips split, her palms torn. Cray laughed, stepping over her like she was trash. Eli threw himself across her body, sobbing, his voice breaking into jagged shards. That's the Wren way, someone whispered. And it was. The sheriff didn't come. He never did anymore. Not since Bran took his badge and broke it in front of the saloon last spring. That was before the preacher's daughter went missing, before the old store burned down, before the gallows stopped swinging. Clara lay still, her eyes open, staring at the sky. Blood trickled down her cheek into the dirt, the brooch gleaming just a few feet away in the dust, forgotten. On the edge of town, beneath the shade of a half-collapsed porch, a figure sat quietly, with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. His hands rested on a cane. His boots hadn't moved in an hour. Some thought he was sleeping. Others thought he was dead. But his eyes were open, watching. As the Wrens retreated, laughing back into the saloon, Clara pushed herself up slowly. Her body trembled, but not from pain. Eli wiped his face with dirty fingers, clinging to her side like a second skin. She didn't speak. She never did. But her eyes told a different story now. Something had changed. That night, Clara sat beneath the warped roof of the abandoned church, with Eli in her lap. The fire was just a handful of embers. He slept fitfully, murmuring in his dreams, flinching at every creak of the wood. She stared into the dark, her fingers drifting across the scar at her neck, the one they'd given her when they took her husband. Last winter, before the snow fell too thick, Bran Wren and his boys had come to the homestead. They said her husband owed. He didn't. They said they needed shelter. He refused. They said she should run. She didn't. They dragged him from the house, made her watch, hung him from the cottonwood at the edge of the field, then left her with a rope burn across her throat and a warning carved into the barn wall with a knife. She hadn't spoken since. Not because she couldn't, because she refused. But tonight, as the wind coiled through the broken rafters like a living thing, something inside her stirred. A memory of thunder, the snap of gunpowder, a woman's laughter under the roar of a crowd. They'd called her Snake Eyes Clara once, the sharpest shot west of the Rio Grande, star of the Jubilee Wild Show. Before she threw it all away for a cabin, a man who played harmonica, and a baby boy with her eyes. Clara pressed her lips to Eli's forehead, closed her eyes, and listened to the wind. It carried the smell of blood and lavender. Tomorrow they would not laugh. The wind slid across the bones of the old church, sighing through broken rafters and whispering over Eli's sleep. His breath came slow and shallow, the way a child breathes when the weight of the world presses down even in dreams. Clara sat with her back against the crumbling altar, her eyes open, her hands still. Midnight passed, and the fire died to a single orange pulse. She stood without a sound. Outside, the desert lay like a beast at rest, silent, wide, and watching. Clara pulled the shawl tighter around her shoulders and stepped barefoot into the darkness. Raven Ridge waited far beyond the edge of town, just where the earth began to fold into shadow and stone. She walked without lantern or trail, feet remembering each mile. Her breath steamed faintly in the dry air. Coyotes cried once, far off, and fell quiet. By the time she reached the split in the ridge, the moon had dipped low, washing the canyon in ghost light. She dropped to her knees and brushed aside a tangle of sage and sand. Her fingers struck iron. Clara dug with purpose. Not hurried, not hesitant, just sure. She unearthed the box an inch at a time. The latch creaked when she opened it. Inside lay a pair of Colt revolvers wrapped in faded velvet, a dozen cartridges, and a small pouch of lavender buds, brittle but still fragrant after all these years. She touched the handle of the first Colt. Fingers curling into old grooves her hands had once shaped thousands of times. For a long while she just held it, and her shoulders shook, not with tears, but something quieter, something stronger. They thought she was just a widow, a broken woman, silenced by grief. But they never knew Clara Lane before she became Clara Mayfield. They never saw her spin 3 shots through playing cards in Madeira while riding bareback in front of a roaring crowd. Never saw her drop a jackrabbit at full sprint from 80 feet with her eyes half shut and a laugh on her lips. That woman didn't die. She just waited, buried. At dawn, the first shot rang out behind the church. It cracked like thunder, scattering crows and waking Eli with a jolt. He rubbed his eyes, staggered to the doorway, and found her standing there in the pale gold light. Her coat hung off her frame like a memory, frayed cuffs, one button missing, but unmistakable. The gun belt rode her hips like it had never left. She didn't smile when she saw him, just nodded once. By midday, she was shooting again. At first, the shots came wide. Her hands trembled, but with each hour, her body remembered. She moved differently now, no showmanship, no flair, just precision and silence. She practiced until her arms ached, until blisters split open and bled. When her strength failed, She sat with Eli and showed him how to read boot prints in soft earth, how to tell direction by the wind, how to hide without being seen. He watched her with wide eyes. She didn't explain who she used to be. He didn't ask. But each time she looked at him, something in her face hardened, steel forged from love and loss, and something older still. Ash Hollow began to stir again, but not with life. The wrens grew bolder. They drank openly in the square. They beat a farmer for speaking out of turn. Bran Wren set his eyes on the preacher's daughter, a girl barely 16. Told her father she'd be safe with him. Told the town that anyone who disagreed would end up like the sheriff. The sheriff was found 2 days later slumped in his chair, blood pooled beneath him. Shot in the head. A suicide, they said. No one believed it, but no one said otherwise. Fear had a shape now, and it walked in boots with spurs that rang like iron teeth. And then, one morning, everything shifted. Cray, the same man who dragged Clara through the dirt, was found hanging upside down from the windmill just outside town. Rope around his ankles, teeth knocked from his jaw, his boots missing. People whispered. Some smiled. Quietly. 2 nights later, another wren, Tommy Black, was found inside the church, slumped in the front pew like he was praying, eyes open and glassy, one clean hole in his forehead. No sound had been heard, no gunfire, no scuffle, just silence, and a single sprig of dried lavender left in his shirt pocket. The stories began to spread. Some said it was a ghost. Others said vengeance had come to Ash Hollow in the shape of a storm. The preacher, shaking with something between fear and hope, said, "God's hand moves in strange ways." But old McDermott knew better. He'd seen the way Clara stood now, not hunched or afraid, but balanced, centered, like a wheel ready to turn, and her eyes weren't empty anymore. They were cold, focused. She didn't speak still, but her silence had weight now, purpose, and people noticed the change. The tailor offered her thread without charge. The stable boy left a flask of water outside the church each morning. No one asked questions. They just followed her with their eyes as she walked, like she was something between a ghost and a prayer. Bran Wren, though, wasn't a man who spooked easily. He gathered his boys and laughed when he heard the rumors. "Let her come," he said. "Let the bitch try." His men cheered. They all wore new pistols now, polished silver and black grips. But they didn't laugh for long. The next week, another body dropped. Then another. And each time, the only clue was lavender. No footprints. No witnesses. Just the silence of a town holding its breath, and the memory of a woman they never really knew. The sun rose heavy and golden over Ash Hollow, casting long shadows across the dirt street like scars that never healed. The town was quiet, but not still. Doors hung open just enough to peek through. Boots creaked against floorboards behind curtains. Fingers clutched rosaries, rifle stocks, each other. Something different was in the air, thicker than dust, louder than wind. Reckoning. Bran Wren strolled into the square like he owned the sky. His coat flared as he moved, dust blooming beneath every step. The preacher's daughter stumbled beside him, her wrist twisted tight in his grip. Tears streaked her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. Bran grinned at the silence of the town. "Hell," he chuckled, yanking her closer. "You'd think y'all saw a ghost." From the far end of the street, the sound of boots came slow and steady, one step at a time, like thunder waiting to break. A woman in a long coat walked forward, the rifle on her shoulder, catching the first breath of sunlight. Her dark hair blew loose beneath her hat, eyes sharp and unblinking. Eli walked beside her, small but steady, clutching a strip of cloth tied around his belt like a sash. They kept walking until the whole town was watching. Bran squinted, tilted his head. "Well, look what crawled back." He pushed the girl aside and took a few steps forward, arms open. "Come to get slapped again, widow." The woman stopped 10 paces away. No, her voice came low, even, and sharp as flint. "Just came to end the circus." The words hung in the air like smoke after a shot. Bran's grin cracked, faltered. His jaw twitched. The silence snapped with a whisper behind him. "Holy hell. That's Clara Lane, the snake-eyed shot from Jubilee shows." The murmur spread like fire on dry brush. Eyes widened. Bran's fingers twitched at his holster, but she was already moving. Not running. Not rushing. Just shifting. The first shot cracked like a whip. One of his men, Jesse Two Tongue, fell with a round clean through his chest, spinning into the horse trough. Water and blood sloshed into the dirt. Another, Garvey, turned to run. Clara fired again, hit his heel dead on. The boot tore clean off. He dropped screaming, face first in the dust. Bran drew his pistol, yelling, "Get her!" The last two men charged. Eli screamed, "Ma, behind!" Clara pivoted, didn't hesitate. Her left hand brought the rifle up and over, a blind shot flaring with a burst of heat. One outlaw collapsed mid-stride, the side of his head vanishing in mist. The last tried to grab Eli. Clara moved faster than thought, faster than anger. One shot, right through the shoulder. He dropped, howling, writhing. Only Bran remained. He stepped back, now sweating, eyes darting. "You don't want to do this, Clara," he said, gun trembling in his hand. We were just playing. You played with my husband's life," she said, voice cold and clear. "With mine. With my boy's hunger." Bran's lip curled. It wasn't personal. Just power. You get that, don't you? This is the frontier. Law's just a rumor here. Clara stepped forward once. Bran panicked. He lunged, grabbed Eli by the arm, and yanked him in front, pressing the barrel of his pistol against the boy's head. The world held its breath. "Drop it!" Bran shouted. "You drop that rifle or the boy's gone." Clara froze. The barrel in her hand lowered. She let it fall. Dust puffed where it landed. "You take him," she said, voice almost whispering now. "And I swear I'll take you with me, even if it's with my last breath." Bran's eyes flickered. "You ain't got nothing left." But Eli did. The boy twisted, fast and angry, and sank his teeth into Bran's wrist. The outlaw screamed, dropped the gun. Clara was already on him. No rifle now, just fists, fury, and 12 months of silent rage. She struck him once, twice, then spun him to the ground and drove her boot into his ribs until the last ounce of defiance bled from his mouth. Bran Wren tried to crawl. She cocked the hammer of her revolver. "Please," he coughed, spitting blood. "Please." She didn't shoot him. She grabbed him by the hair, just like he had done to her, and dragged him down Main Street. The whole town watched as his boots carved a trail in the dust. Past the saloon, past the store, past Judd Danner's trembling hands on the windowsill, to the gates of the church. She tied his wrists with rope stolen from his own saddlebag, bound him to the iron crossbar. Bran whimpered but didn't speak. He knew. The preacher stepped forward, then the blacksmith, then the tailor. One by one, townsfolk emerged from shadows and fear and finally looked their monster in the face. No one stopped Clara. No one told her not to. And then someone clapped. It was slow. A single clap. Then two. The old man on the porch, hat tipped low, rose to his feet and stepped out into the sun. He nodded to Clara, like tipping a glass to a legend. "They'll tell this one," he said to no one. Clara turned without a word. Eli followed. They rode out at dawn. Two figures cast long across the desert, fading into the gold light. No destination spoken. No need. Ash Hollow never forgot. They painted her name in whispers across canyon walls and carved her story in tree trunks where lovers met and drifters wept. They buried Bran Wren somewhere behind the saloon, deep enough that even the coyotes didn't dig too close. And sometimes, when the wind swept low over the sand, folks claimed they smelled lavender. Just for a moment. A single breath. They say the widow of Ash Hollow disappeared after that. But every now and then justice comes with lavender on the wind.